Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there? Oh my goodness, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. It's February 13th, Tuesday, 2018. I'm Papa Bear. My goodness, I just had to pry myself away from a Senate Intelligence Committee meeting. Listening, my goodness, I'll tell you, they know how to raise blood pressure in that group, that's for sure. A lot of stuff has happened since last Thursday. Of course, the FISA memos came out and all the controversy went through the White House and who's lying and who's doing what to who. And Democrats came out with their memo, a counter memo, which of course, kind of as we figured, was going to be packed with so much classified information that it couldn't be released. Kind of makes it look pretty bad. But there is, I do want to say it, there is an active coup underway in the Capitol, and it includes several members of the Congress and the Senate and FBI, CIA, some of the three-letter alphabet soup gang. You know how it goes. So, but yes, there is an active coup going on. Trump has been in office for over a year now, and just so that we understand what's going on here, we know that people have problems with Trump. It's come on, it's a given. Okay. The thing is that's the only problem. The only problem they have is he's Trump. He's not Hillary, or he's not one of the other chosen ones, okay? And to give an example, I'll tell you exactly why. Because of all the successes this man has, nobody wants to acknowledge them. The news spends more time skewering President Trump than they do actually celebrating his accomplishments. To give you an idea, the economy is surging. Yeah, the market's going up and down and up and down. What would we call it? Market correction? Because we've been in a false economy since Bush. The last year of Bush was a false economy. All through the 8 years of Obama was a false economy. It was all propped up by the feds and the banks. So there's got to be a correction sometime, and this is where it's happening. Unemployment is near a 45-year low. Wages are up nearly 3%. The federal government is enjoying the fruits of all that. Okay, we call that the Trump, or they call it the Trump boom labor. According to the monthly Treasury statement released this week, the federal government just raked in more in taxes in the first 4 months of the fiscal year than any other year. It broke the January record for tax collection and ran a surplus for the first time in months. In the month of January, which reflects some of the changes from the GOP's $1.5 trillion tax cut bill, the U.S. Department of Treasury collected just over $361 billion in total tax revenues, a record for the month of January. While the feds collected $361 billion, they managed to spend about $49 billion less, or $312 billion approximately. And that $49 billion process, or that surplus, it helped chip away at the deficit from the previous months of fiscal year 2018, which now stands at almost $176 billion for the fiscal year. The total tax revenue was collected in the first 4 months of fiscal year 2018, approximately, is $1.3 trillion. And most ever collected in the same period ever in history. Fiscal year 2018 revenues include $603 billion in individual income taxes, $372 billion in Social Security and other payroll taxes, $76 billion in corporate income taxes, and $81 billion in other taxes and duties. In January alone, the Treasury collected $212 billion in individual income taxes, $113 billion in Social Security and payroll taxes, $13 billion in corporate income taxes, and $23 billion in other taxes and duties. So you can tell, the Trump economy is working, okay? But I'd like to get back to this this other deal here, because they do seem to have it out for Mr. Trump. They've got it in for him. And I think I know where this comes from. I really do. And a lot of people don't want to put this together, and I'm going to get some haters today, but I do want to point out the facts, because this is, after all, what's out there, okay? Vladimir Lenin, okay, way back, Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov in 1870. Lenin was the founder of the Russian Communist Party, leader of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, and the architect-builder, first head of the Soviet Union. Lenin spent years leading up to the 1917 revolution in exile, with Russia and abroad. The Bolsheviks quickly consolidated power, privatizing all aspects of the Soviet economy, cracking down on dissent through the Cheka, or secret police, and instituting the Red Terror, aimed at destroying monarchist and anti-Bolshevik sympathizers during the Russian Civil War. Despite a series of strokes in his final years, Lenin attempted to shape the future of the Soviet Union, warning against the unchecked power of party members, including Joseph Stalin. His warnings went unheeded. Stalin emerged victorious from the protracted power struggle following Lenin's 1924 death. Okay, but in the early years, he was widely considered one of the most influential and controversial political figures of the 20th century. Vladimir Lenin engineered the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917 and later took over as the first leader of the newly formed Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, which it was not before that. He was later renamed Ulanovsk. I can't pronounce that anyway. He was later adopted the last name Lenin in 1901 while doing underground party work. His family was well educated, and Lenin, the third of 6 children, was close to his parents and siblings. School was a central part of his childhood. His parents, both educated and highly cultured, invoked a passion for learning for their children, especially Vladimir. A voracious reader, Lenin went on to finish first in high school class, showing a particular gift for Latin and Greek. Okay, but all wasn't easy for the family. 2 situations in particular shaped his life. The first came when Lenin was a boy, and his father, an inspector of schools, was threatened with early retirement by a suspicious government, nervous about the influence public school had on Russian society. This kind of sounds familiar. The more significant and more tragic situation came in 1887 when Lenin's older brother, Alexander, a university student at home, was arrested and executed for being a part of a group planning to assassinate Emperor Alexander III. With his father already dead, Lenin now became the man of the family. So he was a young revolutionary. He was exiled to his grandfather's estate in the village of Kukushkino. Lenin took up residence with his sister Anna, whom police had ordered to live there as a result of her own suspicious activities. Eventually, Lenin received his law degree, finishing his schoolwork in 1892. He moved to the city of Samara, where his client base was largely composed of Russian peasants. Their struggles against what Lenin saw as a class-biased legal system only reinforced his Marxist beliefs. Can you see the picture falling together? In time, Lenin focused more of his energy on revolutionary politics. He left Samara in the mid-1890s for a new life in St. Petersburg, the Russian capital at the time. There, Lenin connected with other like-minded Marxists and began to take an increasingly active role in their activities. The work did not go unnoticed, and in December of 1895, Lenin and several other Marxist leaders were arrested. Lenin was exiled to Siberia for 3 years. His fiancée and future wife joined him. Following his release from exile, and then a stint in Munich, where Lenin and others co-founded a newspaper to unify Russian and European Marxists. He returned to St. Petersburg and stepped up his leadership role in the revolutionary movement. So, what happened? The revolution of 1905 and World War I. Lenin's call was soon supported by events on the ground. In 1904, Russia went to war with Japan. The conflict had a profound impact on Russian society after a number of defeats put a strain on the country's domestic budget. Citizens from all walks of life began to vocalize their discomfort over the country's political structure and called for reform. The situation was heightened on January 9, 1905, when a group of unarmed workers in St. Petersburg took their concerns directly to the city's palace to submit a petition to Emperor Nicholas II. They were met by security forces who fired on the group, killing and wounding hundreds. The crisis set the stage for what would be called the Russian Revolution of 1905. Hoping to placate his citizens, the emperor issued his October manifesto, offering up several political concessions, most notably the creation of an elected legislature assembly known as the Duma. But Lenin was far from satisfied. His frustrations extended to his fellow Marxists, in particular the group calling itself the Mensheviks, led by Julius Martov. The issues centered around the party structure and the driving forces of a revolution to fully seize control of Russia, while his comrades believed the power must reside with the Borgias. Lenin passionately distrusted that segment of the population. Instead, he argued a real and complete revolution, one that could lead to socialist revolution that could spread outside Russia. It must be led by the workers, the country's proletariat. During World War II, Lenin went into exile again, World War I, he went into exile again, this time taking up residence in Switzerland. As always, his mind stayed focused on revolutionary politics. During this period, he wrote and published Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, 1916, a defining work of the future leader in which he argued the war was a natural result of international capitalism. In 1917, a tired, hungry, and weary Russia deposed the Tsars. Lenin quickly returned home and, perhaps sensing his own path to power, quickly denounced the country's new-formed provisional government, which had been assembled by a group of leaders of the bourgeois liberal parties. Lenin instead called for Soviet government, one that would be ruled directly by soldiers, peasants, and workers. In late 1917, Lenin led what was soon to be known as the October Revolution, but was essentially a coup d'etat. 3 years of civil war followed. The Lenin-led Soviet government faced incredible odds. The anti-Soviet forces, or whites, headed mainly by former Tsarist generals and admirals, fought desperately to overthrow Lenin's regime. They were aided by World War I allies who supplied the group with money and troops. Determined to win at any cost, Lenin showed himself to be ruthless in his push to secure power. He launched what came to be known as a Red Terror, and a vicious campaign Lenin used to eliminate... My monitor just went down. Here we go. Eliminate the opposition within the civilian population. In August 1918, Lenin narrowly escaped an assassination attempt when he was severely wounded with a pair of bullets from a political opponent. His recovery only reinforced his larger-than-life presence among his countrymen, though his health was never truly the same. But his defeat of an oppression that would keep Russia tethered to Europe's capitalist system ushered in an era of intentional retreat for the Lenin-led government. Russia, as he saw it, would be void of class conflict and the international wars it fostered. But the Russia he presided over was reeling from the bloody civil war he'd helped to instigate. Famine and poverty shaped much of the society. In 1921, Lenin now faced the same kind of peasant uprising he'd ridden to power. Widespread strikes in cities and rural sections of the country broke out, threatening the stability of Lenin's government. To ease the tension, Lenin introduced a new economic policy which allowed workers to sell their grain on the open market. Lenin suffered a stroke in 1922 and then a second one in December of that year. With his health in obvious decline, Lenin turned his thoughts to how the newly formed Russia would be governed after he was gone. So, March 10th, 1923, Stalin's health was dealt another severe blow when he suffered an additional stroke, this one taking away his ability to speak. So, after that came Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was the dictator of the USSR from 1929 to 1953. And under Stalin, the Soviet Union was transformed from a peasant society into an industrial and military superpower. However, he ruled by terror, and millions of his own citizens died during his brutal reign. Born into poverty, Stalin became involved in the revolutionary politics, as well as criminal activities. As a young man, after Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin died, Stalin outmaneuvered his rivals for control of the party. Once in power, he collectivized farming and had potential enemies executed or sent to forced labor camps. Stalin aligned with the United States and Britain in World War II from 1939 to 1945, but afterward engaged in an increasingly tense relationship with the West known as the Cold War. After his death, the Soviets initiated a de-Stalinization process. Okay, so Joseph Stalin was born Joseph oh boy, I'm not even going to pronounce that. Anyway, he was born on December 18th, 1878, or December 6th, 1878, according to the old-style Julian calendar, although he later invented a new birth date for himself, December 21st, 1879, in the small town of Gori, Georgia, then part of the Russian Empire. When he was in his 30s, he took the name Stalin from the Russian, which meant man of steel. Okay, but he grew up poor. He was an only child. His father was a shoemaker and an alcoholic who beat him. His mother was a laundress. As a boy, Stalin contracted smallpox. It left him with lifelong facial scars. As a teen, he earned a scholarship to attend a seminary in the nearby city of Tbilisi, and studied for the priesthood in the Gregorian Orthodox Church. While there, he began secretly reading the work of German social philosopher and Communist Manifesto author Karl Marx. Becoming interested in the revolutionary movement against the Russian monarchy in 1899, Stalin was expelled from the seminary for missing exams, although he claimed it was for Marxist propaganda. Okay, now, after leaving school, Stalin became an underground political agitator, taking part in labor demonstrations and strikes. He adopted the name Koba after a fiction Gregorian outlaw hero and joined the more militant wing of the Marxist Socialist Democratic movement, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. Stalin also became involved in various criminal activities, including bank heists, the proceeds from which were used to help fund the Bolshevik Party. He was arrested multiple times between 1902 and 1913 and subjected to imprisonment and exile in Siberia. Okay, so he's not a sweetheart. 1906, Stalin married Katrina Svenides, a seamstress. The couple had one son, Yakov, 1907-1943, who died as a prisoner in Germany during World War II. Katrina perished from typhus when her son was an infant. In 1918, some sources cite 1919, Stalin married his second wife, Nadia, and the daughter the daughter of a Russian revolutionary. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and she committed suicide in the early 30s. Stalin also fathered several children out of wedlock. But anyway, in 1912, Lenin, then in exile in Switzerland, appointed Stalin to serve on his first Central Committee of the Bolshevik Party. 3 years later, in November 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia. Soviet Union was founded in 1922, with Lenin as its first leader. During these years, Stalin had continued to move up the party ladder, and in 1922 he became Secretary General of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, a role that enabled him to appoint his allies to government jobs and grow a base of political support. Anyway, what happened was they created this Bolshevik Party, okay? And if anybody knows about the Bolshevik Party, like Stalin, he ruled by terror with a totalitarian grip, and in order to eliminate anyone who might oppose him. He expanded the powers of the secret police, encouraged citizens to spy on one another, and had millions of people killed or sent to the Gulag system of forced labor camps. During the second half of the 1930s, Stalin instituted the Great Purge, a series of campaigns designed to rid the Communist Party, the military, and other parts of Soviet society from those he considered a threat. Additionally, Stalin built a cult of personality around him in the Soviet Union. Cities were renamed in his honor. Soviet history books were rewritten to give him a more prominent role in the revolution and mythologize other aspects of his life. He was the subject of flattering artwork, architecture, literature, and music. His name became part of the Soviet national anthem. His government also controlled the Soviet media. Okay? In 1939, on the eve of World War II, Joseph Stalin and German dictator Adolf Hitler signed a non-aggression pact. Stalin then proceeded to annex parts of Poland and Romania, as well as the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. He also launched an invasion of Finland. Then in June 1941, Germany broke the Nazi-Soviet pact and invaded Russia, making significant early roads. Stalin had ignored warnings from the Americans and the British, as well as his own intelligence agencies, about a potential invasion, and the Soviets were not prepared for war. As German troops approached the Soviet capital of Moscow, Stalin remained there and directed a scorched earth defensive policy, destroying any supplies or infrastructure that might benefit the enemy. The tide turned for the Soviets with the Battle of Stalingrad from August 42 to February 43, during which the Red Army defeated the Germans and eventually drove them from Russia. Okay? This is where all your German people died. As the war progressed, Stalin participated in the major Allied conferences, including those in Tehran and Yalta. His iron will and deft political skills enabled him to play the loyal ally while never abandoning his vision of an expanded post-war Soviet empire. Okay, and he didn't mellow with age. He protected his reign of terror, purges, executions, exiles to labor camps, and persecution in the post-war Russia, suppressing all dissent and anything that smacked of foreign, especially Western influence. He established communist governments throughout Eastern Europe, and in 1949 led the Soviets into a nuclear rage by exploding an atomic bomb. In 1950, he gave North Korea's communist leader Kim Il-sung permission to invade the United States, supported South Korea, and even triggered the Korean War. So I'd like to get back to the Bolsheviks, okay? Amongst themselves, the Jews are quite candid about their sympathy for and involvement in Bolshevism. On April 4th, 1919, the Jewish Chronicle says, "There is much in the fact of Bolshevism itself, in the fact that so many Jews are Bolshevists, in the fact that ideals of Bolshevism at many points are consonant with the finest ideals of Judaism. Perhaps this explains why the Red Army uses a Jewish star as its symbol." Probably the best known expose of the Jewish role in the Bolshevik coup d'etat was by Sir Winston Churchill, writing the Illustrated Sunday Herald of 8 February 1920. Churchill wrote, "With the notable exception of Lenin, the majority of leading figures are Jews. Moreover, the principal inspiration of the driving power comes from the Jewish leaders." Communism was, of course, founded by Karl Marx, whose grandfather was a rabbi by the name of Mordecai Marx. Marx was given his initial, the name of Mordecai. Marx was given his initial encouragement by a communist Zionist by the name of Moses Hess, a founder and editor of the Reich Zeitung, the main organ of the leftist throughout Germany. He provided Karl Marx with his first important platform. Later in Brussels, he collaborated with Marx on the German ideology. It was Hess, too, who converted to communism Friedrich Engels, the wealthy textiles magnate who later subsidized Marx from his profits of sweated labor in Britain and Germany. So your also Trotskyites, these all go right into the Jewish line. It comes right into what we would call now Israel. I think the Bible talks about this. Woe unto you, false Jews, for you are the synagogue of Satan, right? I think I remember that. We're going to take a break, and that's what's out there.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on LateNightInTheMidlands.com, and together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
The L&M Radio Network offers a chat room for you, the listener, to connect with others whom are interested in the topics and guests that the L&M Radio Network brings to you. During the live shows, the hosts will even visit the chat room and chat with you, the listener. Click on the big red Chat and Listen button at the top of the website and join us. No subscription is needed at either lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
bensound.com, that's where we get the music. Got to put the plugs in here because, well, that's part of the deal, I guess. Orally. Comes with using the music. Also, we've got to put a shout out to latenightinthemidlands.com, lnmradio.com, lnmradionetwork.com, I'm sorry. The LNM Radio Network on Paranormal Radio apps and also on iTunes. And WCET 101.7 FM Columbia Talk. And of course, the great crew here at Late Night in the Midlands. Without them, honestly, there'd be no us. So if you would, come on over, head over to the website, donate, and become a subscriber if you'd like, and help us get the message out, get the truth here. This is where you'll find it. I had something else on my mind I wanted to plug in here, but I guess I've forgotten it, which comes with old age. So I'm just going to buzz right into it here. I went off on my Israel Bolshevik rant there, and I think that pretty much closes up the first hour here. So I want to touch on a few other things. Climate change. The climate hoaxers are foiled again by the actual science. Now they're saying there's an ice age coming, okay? To kind of recap this, the global warming hoax, okay? First you have to look at the American Democrats, the radical left and the globalists. And what they're trying to do is, or what they've been doing is just explorations of, one another. But they haven't been using real science, okay? The end game of any Democrat that's worth it, their salt in the party is globalization. And by breaking down the sovereignty of the states and the nations, the left can add innumerable strength to their misguided cabal from the far reaches of, Scandinavia, Russia, the Far East, wherever. Without those voices singing in unison, the American Democrats will likely just fade away into oblivion in the very near future. Something that the ice caps will not be doing anytime soon, despite the dire and dramatic diatribe of the left. You see, America is undergoing a massive conservative awakening. The Democrats have turned their evil overlord George Soros for protection. Soros wants in return, what he wants in return are political favors that will suit his vast business interests, and given his extraordinary wealth, can only truly exist on a global scale. And this puts old Georgie in the business of turning wealth into power in the fewest steps possible, and that leads him on a path to globalism. And that, of course, will consolidate those whose palms need greasing. One way to achieve that, create a global threat that only a coalition of nations can solve. Like, the planet's heating up so fast, we're doomed, right? The only problem with this is that none of it's true. Science has thoroughly debunked the global warming hoax hundreds of times over. But just in case there was still some holdouts in the back of the DNC with their fingers in their ears, here's yet another example of why the entire charade is collapsing. A study by the University of California, San Diego has claimed that by 2050, the sun is expected to become cool. You might think, what's the big deal? But remember, this means that solar activities that create the heat of the sun to sustain life on Earth may diminish. And the last time it happened was in the 17th century when the Thames River froze. Scientists call this Maunder minimum. Physicist Dan Lubin at the university and his team studied the past event and concluded that we're in favor for a worst case. The sun is expected to get much dimmer than last time, and in scientific terms, it's a grand minimum, a time period in the 11-year solar cycle when the solar activities are at their lowest point. According to the study, titled Ultraviolet Flux Decrease Under a Grand Minimum from IUE Short Wavelength Observation of Solar Analogs, and published in the journal Astrophysical Journal Letters, this grand minimum will be 7% cooler than such periods from the past. Scientists also say the sun might have another cooling period in a decade. So, of course, the words Maunder minimum are likely on the first page of whatever neo-fascist rule book the left is using to censor the debate on climate change. But, in the words of the great Neil deGrasse Tyson, a staunch climate hoaxer, a good thing about science is that it's true whether you believe it or not. So much for that. There was a mystery here in Washington, northwest Washington. Massive trees fell. More than 100 trees fell in an area on the north side of Lake Quinault in the Olympic Peninsula just after midnight on January 27th. Cliff Mass, a Seattle meteorologist and professor of atmospheric sciences in the University of Washington, is trying to figure out why. According to a two-part post he wrote for his blog, Cliff Mass, Weather and Climate, early reports seemed to indicate that a microburst was responsible for the tree fall. Mass became skeptical that winds from a microsurf would be sufficient to topple the large trees, particularly since some fell while others were snapped at the base of the tree. He says, I spoke to Logan Johnson, meteorologist in charge at NWS Satellite Office. He suggested to snap off such big trees would take winds of at least 70 to 80 miles per hour, maybe more. Mass noted at the time the tree fall occurred, radar indicated that there was no hint of instability and thunderstorms, typical during episodes of microbursts, defined by the National Weather Service as a localized column of sinking air, or a downdraft, within a thunderstorm, and is usually less than or equal to 2.5 miles in diameter. Microbursts can cause extensive damage to the surface and in some instances can be life-threatening, but interestingly, the tree fall was picked up as seismic activity. So, at 1:26 a.m. that morning, there was a lot of activity. There were no tremors noted. In other regions, none of that stuff. It's pretty weird because there's no really reason for it. And you've got like 100 trees that just fell over, and I'm talking big trees. Unreal. Unbelievable. Well, back to the regular rot here. CNN's attempt to protect Obama from FBI tech scandal just got debunked. Following the release of the text messages exchanged between FBI officials Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, CNN attempted to dismiss media reports that called into question former President Barack Obama's involvement in the Hillary Clinton email probe. But as noted by Grabian News, it's really CNN's reporting that doesn't quite add up. It all started last week when Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson and other Republicans on the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee released a new batch of messages that were exchanged between Page and Strzok, who were having an affair. The messages were accompanied by a report called The Clinton Email Scandal and the FBI's Investigation of It. In a message dated September 6, 2016, just 2 months before the election day, Page wrote to Strzok about getting then FBI Director James Comey ready to brief Obama. Page's reasoning was that POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. Fox News reviewed the message and noted that according to the new Senate report, this text raises questions about Obama's personal involvement in the Clinton email investigation. It didn't take long for CNN to take a stab at debunking that bombshell report. People familiar with the matter strongly dispute the assertion that the text message referencing Clinton email probe, the outlet wrote, the text message, they say, was actually referencing Obama's desire to be kept abreast of the FBI's investigation into Russian election meddling. CNN correctly pointed out that the text message in question was sent several months after the FBI closed the Clinton email investigation. Moreover, it came just 3 days before September 5th, when Obama met with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss election meddling. However, texts between Strzok and Page show that on September 7th, Strzok was scheduled to meet with Comey to prepare FBI director to brief Obama, meaning that Obama would not have met with Comey until days after he spoke with Putin. Check out my 9:30 MTG on the 7th, Strzok wrote. I can tell you why you're having that meeting. It's not what you think, Page responded. Before Strzok said that the meeting's purpose was to provide Comey with talking points for his own upcoming meeting. At that point, Page agreed, writing yes, because POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. So why would the meeting wherein the FBI is supposed to prepare its talking points for Obama-Putin meeting when the Obama-Putin meeting happened 2 days before? What's more, though the FBI had the point already announced, it would not recommend that charges would be filed against Clinton. The former Secretary of State's email controversy was still a controversial topic, even within the Bureau. So on the night of September 7th, Fox correspondent Catherine Herridge reported that Comey was trying to quell internal dissent over the FBI's decision to exonerate Clinton. Meanwhile, House Intelligence Committee ranking Democrat Adam Schiff went on CNN that night and criticized then Utah Representative Jason Chaffetz after the Republican called for the Clinton email to be reopened. Yeah. Point being, even as the FBI wasn't investigating Clinton at this point in time, the topic was still very much occupying the news and the FBI's focus, Grabian argued. This came from Western Journal. Western Journal isn't too bad. I like a lot of stuff that comes from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge comes up pretty good. Plane crash. I didn't get too much information on the plane crash. 71 people died. One of them was connected to Uranium-1 or Rosatom. And, of course, they're going to say that this guy was the one who wrote the dossier, but he didn't write the dossier. He was the guy that made the deal with the uranium, with the Clintons and all that. Anyway, FBI informant in Uranium-1 scandal testifies against Obama. Here's what he said. But I was frustrated watching the U.S. government make numerous decisions before benefiting Rosatom and Tenex, while those entities were engaging in serious criminal conduct on U.S. soil. So, the informant, Douglas Campbell, this comes from Daily Wire, the informant, Douglas Campbell, told congressional investigators on Wednesday that Moscow sent millions of dollars to the U.S. with the expectation that it would benefit the Clintons, while Hillary Clinton quarterbacked a reset in U.S.-Russian relations in her role as Secretary of State during the Obama administration, the Hill reported. The key facts. Campbell participated in closed-door interviews with the Senate Judiciary, House Intelligence, and House Oversight and Government Reform Committees. Campbell said that the Russian nuclear officials told him Moscow hired an American lobbying firm, APCO Worldwide, because it was in a unique position to influence the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton in particular. Democrats are aggressively trying to discredit him, but are having little success as the FBI found Campbell's undercover work valuable enough to reward him with a $50,000 check in 2016. Campbell says that the FBI told him that his work was briefed to President Obama as part of his daily presidential briefing, which would mean that Obama was aware of the crimes committed by the Russian officials. The FBI forced him to pay $500,000 of his own money to Russian officials as bribes to facilitate his cover. and the Bureau never reimbursed him despite their praise of his work, and the fact the ordeal was so stressful he developed serious life-threatening illnesses. Initially, reports indicated that Campbell was threatened by the Obama administration in an attempt to silence him before the 2016 election, as they did not want this case hurting Hillary Clinton after then Attorney General Loretta Lynch's Justice Department learned that he filed a lawsuit in a Maryland federal court. It was not immediately clear what the lawsuit was about. However, Sarah Carter reports Campbell filed a lawsuit in Maryland federal court against the Russian nuclear entities, asking for the return of the money he had to launder out of his own paychecks. Russian and American executives implicated in the 10X bribery scheme specifically asked him to try to help get the Uranium One deal approved by the Obama administration, the Hill noted. He provided documentation of the corruption and crimes taking place to help Russia to the Obama administration months before they made a series of decisions that directly benefited Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. He provided documentation to the Obama administration that showed that the Russian government was actively involved in trying to help Iran develop their nuclear capabilities years before the Obama administration implemented the now infamous Iran deal. He said that he was told by FBI that the politics of the Obama administration overruled justice from taking place against the criminal activity that was happening. So this is pretty bad stuff, okay? He says, I was frustrated watching the U.S. government make numerous decisions benefiting Rosatom and 10X, while those entities were engaged in serious criminal conduct on U.S. soil, Campbell said in his testimony, as reported by the Hill's John Solomon. 10X and Rosatom were raking in millions of U.S. dollars by signing contracts with American nuclear utility clients. At the same time, they were indulging in extortion by using threats to get bribes and kickbacks, with a portion going to Russia for high-ranking officials. I remember one response I got from an agent when I asked how it was possible CFIUS would approve the Uranium One sale when the FBI could prove Rosatom was engaged in criminal conduct, Campbell continued. His answer? Ask your politics. Right? Some of the key players that were engaging in the criminal racketeering case have started to face justice, albeit years later. It wasn't until 2015 that American businessman Darren Condry, whose company Transportation Logistics International pled guilty to conspiring to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or FCPA, and conspiring to commit wire fraud, according to the Department of Justice. Russian natural Vadim Mikarin, who was a top official of the Russian nuclear arms subsidiary 10X and would later become president of 10M and the American subsidiary of Rosatom, was also sentenced in December of 2015. Mikarin, who only pled guilty to money laundering, was arrested for a racketeering scheme back in 2004. He was sentenced to 48 months in prison. This name rings a bell. This name, Mikarin. Vadim Mikarin. I think he was the man who missed the flight where 71 people died, where one was targeted. I think he missed that flight. I saw a video. I think that was him. Mark Lambert, 54, co-owner of Transportation Logistics International, was charged this month on an 11-count indictment with one count of conspiracy to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA, and to commit wire fraud. 7 counts of violating the FCPA, 2 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of international promotion money laundering, as stated in the DOJ press release. Lambert's charges stem from an alleged scheme to bribe Mikarin in order to secure contracts with 10X, according to the DOJ release. So there was a whole bunch of stuff going down there. Uranium One, right? And of course, as the Democrats and the Republicans target each other with accusations of Russian collusion, they seize on evidence of the other's alleged wrongdoing, no matter how flimsy. The latest such case is the Uranium One controversy, right? Though Democrats have accused President Trump of colluding with Russia, They offered little to no evidence to prove the claim. Meanwhile, Trump has said the real collusion was between Clinton and the Russians on Uranium One, a Canadian-based mining company that owns 20% of U.S. uranium deposits. That, of course, the whole big deal out there in the Midwest, right, Hammond? In 2010, the Obama administration approved the sale of Uranium One to Rosatom, a Russian state agency company. This was the era of the infamous reset in U.S.-Russian relations. Well, I guess that didn't work too good, did it? The contract called for 4 payments of $750,000 over 12 months. APCO is expected to give assistance free of charge to the Clinton Global Initiative as part of their effort to create a favorable environment to ensure the Obama administration made affirmative decisions on everything from Uranium One to U.S.-Russian civilian nuclear cooperation agreement. Campbell testified, according to The Hill. Moreover, Campbell told lawmakers he was personally involved in channeling bribes from the U.S.-based company Transportation Logistics International. You'd have to be politically blind not to see the significance of this story. It's alleged the Clinton Global Initiative was a front for receiving illicit payments using the now patented Clinton pay-to-play legal and media analyst Lionel told RT. It will be fascinating to see how the Clinton-friendly mainstream news media handle this most sticky situation. And we're going to see this happen. You know, if anyone has been following QAnon, I'm sure a lot of people don't care much for him, or they don't believe what's going on, this, that, and the other. But the Q posts have been pretty good. They've been spot on. They've been very spot on. Switching gears here, medical kidnap. In the state of Arizona, which has the infamous reputation of removing the highest percentage of children in the U.S. from their homes and families through Child Protective Services, has now also been exposed as having a very corrupt foster care network that includes pedophile rings where young children are imprisoned in state-approved foster homes and trafficked to pedophiles. In a developing story based out of the military town of Sierra Vista, Arizona, the home of Fort Wakaka, David Frodzum, a former commander with the Department of Defense in Afghanistan who was discharged from duty due to sexual harassment behavior and an assessment by the military that he had unalterable personality disorder, has been arrested and convicted of operating a pornographic pedophile ring based out of his state-approved foster home. Arizona places 2-year-old child in foster pornographic pedophile ring. Unreal. Local news in Arizona covered this story, but Health Impact News reached out to the biological mother of Devani and told her side of the story, revealing that Devani never should have been taken out of the home in the first place, where she was loved by her mother, who repeatedly tried to report the abuse she was seeing in her daughter with no results. Now, another fostered child who was adopted by the Frodzums and put into their pornographic pedophile ring has turned 18 and come forward to reveal details of years of horrible torture and sexual trafficking while suing the state of Arizona for damages of $15 million. This is just crazy. This is nuts. You know, people doing this, it's a big thing. It's widespread, and probably some of you listening, I can't say yes, I can't say no. I'm not going to say either way. But I'm going to tell you right up front, if you're a pedophile and you're listening, you're sick. You need help. And if you can't get help, die. There's something wrong with me. I don't know. This pedophile thing, this whole pedophilia, the child sacrifice thing, it's sick. And if I believed in killing people myself, it's probably something I wouldn't have any problem doing. But you know what? There's a sweep going around, and this is just the beginning. All of you sick bastards are going to get swept up, and you're going to go. And I'm going to love it. I'm going to smile every time one of you either gets shot or locked up or executed. Every time they find one of you, I'm going to smile. And I'm going to know that I had nothing to do with it. But I'm also going to know that God has a hand in it, because this stuff is coming to an end. Okay? Better days are coming. And I keep talking about Bible prophecy with this, and yes, I've made some bad predictions in the past. I'll admit it. There are some things that haven't passed yet. It's not quite time, but we're close. And even if not, there's a moment in history here. There's a teaching moment. Okay? This is a very, very important part of history. There's a coup going on right now. And you have to ask yourself, what side are you on? Have you even chosen a side? Because during the Revolutionary War, there was only 3% that fought. Everybody else was oblivious, okay? But this age of information and technology, you cannot be blind. You cannot be indifferent to this, okay? You need to take a side. And you don't need to actively fight it. You don't need to go out there and create a scene or anything like that. You need to stand your ground. You need to impress your good moral conduct on your fellow people. Remember, you're judged by your fruits, okay? So everything that you do is going to rub off onto someone, be it your children or a neighbor or friends, anything like that. You have an impact. A certain amount of you has an impact. And you have to decide what kind of impact you want to make. What's going to work, okay? See, I have little philosophies in life that kind of help things for myself. It helps me to be better as a person, okay? Like general conversations. Small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. By no means do I have a great mind. That's why I'm here talking about events, okay? That's pretty much what's going on. This is what's going on today. And I broke down and I decided to put audio files on YouTube, and you'll find them at What's Out There. I did change the YouTube name. Just search username What's Out There in YouTube, and you'll find the past episodes. There won't be anything live there. You will see the pre-recorded episodes once I upload them. But I did break down, you're going to find us on YouTube every now and then. And other than that, you're not going to find us on Facebook. I'm not doing any live audio or anything like that, live video, because I have a face for radio. And on a lighter side, I just want to put this one out too. Here in about 3 weeks or so, I have a dental appointment. I'm hoping to get my teeth back, so you won't be listening to me whistle as much anymore. I'll have teeth. Right now I don't have any, so bear with me. Anyway, this is Late Night in the Midlands, L&M Radio Network. Also, we are at WCET 101.7 FM, Columbia Talk. And that, my friends, is What's Out There.
Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election. And it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there?